the sand out of my shoes, and in the process, got a bunch of sand in my pants. Greetings. It's 11:33 a.m. Pacific time on Wednesday, Miracle Day, Mercury's Day, which means time for Storytelling Hour with your host and celestial navigator, Gemini Brett. Sorry about the wind in your ears, but I wanted to show you where we are, which is the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. So it was either wind and waves, let's try the hood, and maybe we'll walk, or screaming kids and inner children. It's like a lot of good Leo fun happening over there yesterday, and a lot of Leo sun and Libra moon, the two of those luminaries today being in quintile, which is a very Leo shape. Anyway, the fifth of the wheel tends towards creativity and joy and play. I'm going to have to learn to love sand during this walk. And let me just ask, I see a couple of you here live. Hey, Venus, Revive, and Nadine. How's the sound? Can you hear me okay? I'm hoping that it's coming through these earbuds and not through my phone mic. So I'll wait to see your reply. Hey, you know what? I won't wait. Nadine, thanks for that. I guess I will. Let's show you this way. Mama Ocean. And I pointed this thing in this direction long enough, you'd see the heads of some harbor seals popping up. I see one over here, actually. And maybe we'll walk towards where there's a bunch of harbor seals barking and doing their thing. Although there were just 5 police cars heading out onto the wharf with their lights on. And they're doing stuff out there. So maybe we'll stay where it's a little safer. All right, I'm going to try to get the hoodless look going until the wind comes up again. And when it does, I'll ask you about the wind, that invisible force, which in a sense is the subject of today's beachy walk at the Santa Cruz Boardwalk. The sexy trine of the invisible OverMind. Winter, I see. Yes, I'm in Santa Cruz. What do I mean by the sexy trine of the invisible OverMind? Well, a sexy trine is what I call the shape that some refer to as a sextile fan or a double sextile. Anna told me the other day that people are calling it a minor trine, which I find interesting. I mean, it would show up as a trine in a second harmonic chart, or a grand trine in the second harmonic chart. But I'm talking about the double sextile between Aquarius, Pluto, Aries, Neptune, and Gemini, Uranus, right? So that's what I call this shape where you have a trine, right? So the trine connects the elements of kind, like the Gemini air where Uranus is, with the Gemini air where Pluto is in Aquarius. Sorry, the Aquarius air where Pluto is. And in between the two, we have this midpoint structure, right, where Neptune and Aries lives. And that will hold for some time. So it will be activated along its way by visible planets. And in fact, as you know, at its inception, Saturn is there in Aries with Neptune. Saturn and Neptune both in Aries, both retrograde, heading back for some unfinished business in Pisces, and then they'll come into Aries again and engage once again with this sexy trine, the sextiles inside the trine, you see? So hopefully you weren't planning on something erotic or evocative here. I just like naming things with fun words. Ooh, the double shot. 128 feet in the air of craziness. No, thank you. No, thank you at all. And they call it fun. And I think we're hearing a lot of wind. Can I just ask, are you being overwhelmed by wind in the microphones right now? Put the hood up until I see your response. You know, like that idea of getting shot up into the air 128 feet to have fun might be resonant with this sexy Trine. There's something very exhilarating about fear, which in a way is like an invisible force. Not always, right? I mean, if you're hustling away from somebody in a parking lot, that's not invisible at all. And I'm certainly not one to suggest that fear is false emotions appearing real. I know fear to be a very, very real thing. Um, as I know the opportunity of our will and bravery and courage, especially courage to overcome. So, yesterday, for example, we received the news that a gigantic earthquake had happened off the coast of Russia, and there was a tsunami warning in effect for coastal California. And there were kind of mixed reports about whether or not you should evacuate and head for the hills or just stay alert. And it was said to be meeting us here at the beach in Santa Cruz. We're staying like right on the beach over here at like 12:15 a.m. Now I'm not sure why Anna felt compelled to tell the kids. Actually, I am. She's like, look, they're gonna sense it anyway. They're gonna like feel intuitively my fear, and I'd rather share the news. Of course, the conversation got pretty interesting after that. I was encouraging, keep it mum. But anyway, you know, that kind of thing. Like, there's this force, there's this great force building. It's like these outer planets teaming up to make this powerful shape about our own. These invisible planets, you know, the air, in some ways, like the most invisible of the elements, isn't it? Right? Like the earth, the water. Last night I could have shown you a bonfire out here, and of course that fire wouldn't happen without air. And you heard it, and maybe you're still hearing it now, even though we're hoods up. That's probably better. Um, but can you see it? Right? So when I study and when I teach the elements, you know, you want to learn Earth, sit with a tree. Look for Capricorn. Look for Virgo. Look for Taurus. You want to learn fire, start a fire. And even in that process, you might find Aries. You might find Leo in the roaring flame. You might find Sagittarius in the smoke that rises and takes its own path to the heavens, traveling far and wide as it does, you know. To the water. We walked the river with Maya sleeping on my chest today. Well, I walked the river with Maya sleeping on my chest while Mom and the boys rode the Giant Dipper roller coaster during its 100th anniversary tour of this beach. Imagine the changes that roller coaster has seen. You know, so the water of the river, it's like a different animal than the water of the ocean, which is a different animal at high tide than low tide. You get my point. You know, and there's the ocean we can see, there's the surface, and there's the ocean we cannot, there's the depths. The final frontier on Earth, right? Like your body is not equipped to go too low. But where is the air, right? Like, how do we sit with the air and study it? Um, so I don't need to take this too much further, but you're feeling me like in some ways the air is the invisible force. Yeah? And it's hosting these invisible beings, Pluto and Aquarius, Uranus and Gemini, who are scheduled to trine. Now, not until the year 2026. And it's a big deal. You know, Uranus and Pluto, they only come together every 150 years or so because of the extreme eccentricity of Pluto's orbit, which means far from a circle, greatly elliptical. It's hard to put any average time on anything Pluto. So consecutive Uranus Pluto conjunctions can be separated as little as 130 years or by as much as 170-ish years, right? So we say 150. And we know they came together thrice in 1965, 66 time, 60s. So that was like a new moon of the Uranus Pluto thing. Revolution, evolution, coming together. Did that happen in the 60s? Yes, right? And, just like a new moon, which configures every 29 and a half days, like the one a few days ago that I'm going to get back to, well, I guess 6 days ago now, because a sextile takes 5. Maybe I'll get back to that too. Um, just like a new moon, of course, will eventually become full, so will a Uranus Pluto seed, the seed being their conjunction time. I like to think of fullness, which of course in the lunation is moon opposite sun, moon fully reflecting sunlight back to earthly eyes. I like to think of the full moon as the flower, which thinks it's achieved its mission, but then the bees come, and if it's willing to be pollinated, then the fruit becomes the true fulfillment of the seed. And the fruit, of course, holds the seeds so that once it is consumed, it rots and composts into soil. The seeds that it holds will become the potential of the next cycle, right? So for me, when we look at these principal stages of new moon or conjunction, waxing half moon or opening square of a cycle, full moon or the opposition of a cycle, waning half moon or the closing quarter of a cycle, we're talking about seed, sprout, flower, fruit. This harbor seal, I think, is telling me I'm on its beach. And I'm like, you're right. You're right. You're right. I'm going to just walk this way. Please don't hurt me. That is a very visible force. That's a big guy, too. All right. So, in a sense, the seed of Uranus Pluto was planted with their conjunction in the mid 60s. So, I guess the seed looks like hippies. And the anti war movement and the Civil Rights Act, at least here in the United States, right? But that potential, that seed, was happening far and wide. The return to indigenous awareness was happening here in the States too. And NEPI, Sweat Lodge, came out of hiding, right? Where it had to go during the genocides. Sundance started happening again. You know that? Earth Day was born, right? Some of that, it's said, as the result of the blue marble photograph that we're told the Apollo astronauts took, right, of the whole Earth. And now we see that we're all on one big, beautiful boat, one big spaceship. You, me, and the sea. The waters which connect us all. This watery world. Water is life. So there's these, and there's many other themes, of course. One of my favorite examples of the Uranus Pluto seed is Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Why? Because this is the artist saying we're the artists. And no, you record suits, you industry people, like we're not going to make a single every week to pad your pockets. We're going to make a concept album. Like, what is that? They show you in a year and they lock the studio doors, you know? Back when the Beatles kind of got along. But, you know, I find that actually to be a really profound example of the potential of revolution Uranus and evolution Pluto coming together. And in the sign of Virgo, which is for me the sacred, and probably for all of us, practice, alchemy, earth. When I study the earth signs in the tree, I see Capricorn as the trunk and the roots, Taurus as the flowers and the fruits, and Virgo is the leaf that reaches for the light and does the inner work that feeds the thing. So that seed sprouted with Uranus square Pluto, right? And unlike the sprouting of the lunation, which happens about a week after new moon, seed took a while, right? And interestingly, it's not always going to be the same amount of years or time after the seed of a Uranus Pluto conjunction, again, because orbits are not circles, and that's especially true when we talk about Professor Pluto. So between the years of 2012 and 2015, there were 7 exact Uranus Pluto squares. This was the time when I started practicing astrology, really when astrology came to me. And I sat at that time with so many folks who were born during the Uranus Pluto conjunction of the mid 60s who were like, I don't know what the heck is happening here, but everything's freaking out. It's like, oh, yeah, this is the time for the seed that is you and the times at which you were born to sprout. And we did, of course, see some amazing correspondence in those years with the mid 60s. I'd say not as much as I had hoped to see. But sprouting ain't easy, right? This thing's got to break through the soil, get exposed to the winds and the rains. Of course, we're told that the wind bends the stem to help the plant grow strongly and make it ready for a long and fruitful life. But sprouting ain't easy. Squares ain't easy. You know, whether it's the waxing or the waning half moon in Hawaii, they call this the olis. And the idea is, you know, leave people alone, give them some space. Things are going to be tricky. Yes, 18 is a significant number, referring to a question posed in the chat, but let's not take that journey into the moon card just now. Though I will say I was playing with 18s and 19s on the way over here. Sprouting ain't easy. And there's something so strange if we think about this with the lunation, with the moon sun cycle, the 29.5 day cycle of moon phases. There's something so strange about a straight line on the moon's face. For she is such a curvy being. And that's how it is, right? Like nature is wavy, curvy. Straight lines are kind of weird. They feel artificial. Hey guys, is it all good out there? We just got the alert that they left in the morning. That beach is open. I'm not sure what the delay is on this one. Okay, well, there were just like 5 cars running out there with lights on. Oh, no, there's a boat got too close to the water, but okay. Right on, thank you. Some boat got too close to the wharf. It's definitely a 5 cop car event. How many cops does it take to say, get your boat away from the wharf? Anyway, I'm sure you need to prepare in case the wharf is struck by a boat, and then you're going to need all hands on deck, right? I'm not trying to talk smack, just a little bit. How do you like a roaming storytelling hour, folks? We get to let reality, which is Earth, participate in the elements, even the invisible ones like the wind. But the wind is quite visible here, isn't it? Flying flags. And which flag do you fly? Is that of the wind or of the earth? Of the fire or what? Probably the water. So, the straight line on the moon. It's such a strange thing. She's such a curvy being, and nature waves and curves. So the straight lines, like this here wharf, it feels kind of man-made. Maybe that's true of the moon. Some have made this argument. It's nice when after that square, the moon starts getting some curve back to the shape of her smile. That one, right? That's like the trine. I mean, even before, when the moon is like binovile the sun, she's starting to look pretty square. Obviously, square the sun, straight line, 90 degrees. You get up into like even like the tri-septile space, which is like 103 and a half ish degrees, and the moon's visibly not square anymore. But really, like you hit that trine. So when the moon is 120 degrees from the sun, and you've kind of you feel that you've passed that initiation. Well, what initiation? And this is where I feel relating the astrological aspects to the so-called monomyth or the hero heroine's journey can be quite effective. If you're familiar with that, there's something about crossing the threshold and leaving the regular world and heading out into the special world where we're going to have this adventure, where we're going to be initiated, where we're going to overcome adversity, where we're going to find the elixir, right? And then we'll bring that back to the regular world. And so we cross the threshold coming back, right? That would be like the waning half moon or the third quarter square of a cycle. So, as far as the Uranus Pluto seed is concerned, we cross this threshold into the special world. Now, I think the 60s were pretty special, and some of you were there. Most of us, the names I'm seeing in the comment thread, were not. But, and I remember in 2012, 2015, I had the opportunity to thank many of the elders of our tribe, if I use those terms, or of the community, for, being there, doing that thing actively. I will say these days I'm a little perplexed about how many of the people who are still kind of in that spirit are fighting for the strangest things, like the exact things they were once fighting against, right? Freedom! So put your mask on. Just saw 3 masks, by the way, as I was walking on the beach. Should have picked them up. Shame on me. But those folks shouldn't have dropped them. And they really shouldn't have had them anyway. So let's not get off track, I guess. So it's so weird how the spirit can get put off track. You know, many folks in the hippie movement were like perplexed about why the government would give them LSD. And that's what was happening. And cats around here in the Bay Area, they knew it. They wrote about it, they spoke about it, you know? It's like, but why is the government, who is so antithetical to our purpose, like flooding our scene with this great liberating medicine that will set our minds free? Because it doesn't, I mean, look, it can, don't get me wrong. But like that thing turned from an anti-war movement to sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Not to say that those don't all have their wonder. So this seed, with its many wonders and splendors, planted in the mid-60s, sprouted. 2015, 2012 to 2015, these 7 exact squares, like we're in the energy of that, like some years before and after as well. The work of Richard Tarnas tends to be the crown jewel of this type of research. So Richard Tarnas's work, Cosmos and Psyche, definitely worth your review if you're strong enough to hold that gigantic book. Let's turn this thing around and show you these lions here. Usually this place is packed, but right now I'm just going to call these cats the king and the queen. This guy just complete with battle scars. It's a really weird scene with those cats, right? They're like constantly battling, bloodied for their own territory. And then you'll catch them in a cuddle puddle. I'm more of a fan of this image of the air, our feathered friends. So we've entered the special world. Now, what's the special world of Uranus Pluto? Is that not special enough? Like what's the regular world of Uranus Pluto? That's pretty special. so, so is the special world of a special energy actually just regular? Or are we going to start getting all conservative as a revolt? You know, intriguingly, that has been happening some. And if we don't want to speak to that just in the realm of politics alone, and we could, how about the truth that most young astrologer folks who really kind of come to astrology recently, many in this kind of 2012 to 2015 time frame of the sprouting of the Uranus Pluto seed, the young astrologers tend towards traditional astrology. I was just in a meeting with a bunch of elder astrologers, generally speaking, who were wondering why they can't get more young folks to come around. And I was like, the young folks are way more attracted to old astrology. And while a couple ears in the room heard what I was saying, it's like, oh yeah, well, so we need to incorporate more of the things that these young folks are interested in. Others just kind of argued about how it's all the same. And I was like, all right. You know? But it is an interesting thing, I think, to consider. What is the special world for a special seed like Uranus, Pluto? Now, Uranus and Pluto won't oppose for many, many years. Maybe one of you who are around a computer right now could drop that date. Uranus opposite Pluto. I'm sure there will be at least a few oppositions down the road. What I can say is that there's a Uranus Pluto trine in 2026. In a way, we've kind of come into that shape because, as you know, Pluto dancing across the Capricorn Aquarius cusp has now fully committed to the Aquarian way for some time. And Uranus has recently ingressed to Gemini. So energetically, and they're not too far off geometrically either, the Uranus Pluto trine is alive. But they will perfect this trine in 2026. I think it's the first of three, but I'm sorry to say I can't say right now. That's where it's helpful to not be walking on the beach. Am I a Trump supporter? A question comes in. No. I don't drink the Coke or the Pepsi. That's all corn syrup, y'all. And what I will say about the invisible forces that we might want to be afraid of is just look at all the laws that have been passed over the last decades by the blue crew and the red side of the same thing, all towards control, and especially control through information. And it's definitely heating up. And the funny thing is, many people suggest, like, we got away from that. Do I like vodka then? No, I've been sober for a long time, since 2012, and never really a big vodka character anyway. It was gin for a bit, but mostly like whiskeys, which doesn't mean I'm a Trump supporter either. Anyway, I should stop reading this shit. Except for this. Thank you so much, Discerning Light. 2046 to 2048, Uranus opposite Pluto. By the way, speak the name of the faster moving planet first, and then you'll get to see time. And you'll see what I mean when you take on that shape of good astrological grammar. I was actually taught that by Kent Bai when I gave a talk about the Pluto-Uranus square. And he's like, hey, that's the Uranus-Pluto square. It was very helpful. All right, anyway. So it's an amazing thing, this alone. Uranus trine Pluto. Now, there should be something here where we've come out of some tension, where we are finding some release, because that's what the trines are about. There is something very Holy Trinity actually in a grand trine, or even in a trine itself. I feel like the trine is perhaps the least understood thing in astrology, which is a weird thing to say. Like, all you're going to hear about is like, oh, it flows. It's easy. It's benefic. It's Jupiterian. Well, what is it? What does it do? We have a lot of ideas and experience really about how square is square. And it ain't easy. But it will help things come into form, manifest, break through. Trines, it's a little confusing. Now, one thing about a trine, in a way, it's the calm after the storm. Where the sextile would be the calm before. It says that he walks the wind tunnel to the piece on the other side. Should we do that again? I don't know if it works in this direction. Let's find out. Wind tunnel. Okay, so this invisible force of the wind. Let's go. Hold on, we gotta go back further. We gotta go back further. I don't know if you're hearing this, but I feel it back down. Square. Oh, there's a square. Square. Fine. And we're not even there yet, right? Like, the trine is this shape that's inviting us, now that we've made it to the other side, to the special world. There's a time for a breath. You've passed some great gateholds, some great thresholds, some great initiation. But the real test has not even come around yet. You might think you're through it. Uh-uh. You're on your way to it. But don't even worry about that because we're trying them. So there's some really potential beautiful breakthrough opportunity in this Uranus Pluto trine. I mean, real potential, beautiful, amazing breakthrough, harmony and understanding, mystic crystal revelations, and the mind's true liberation. Aquarius. Now, the age of Aquarius is kind of a very different astronomical consideration and criteria, but it is intriguing to know that Jupiter conjoins Saturn, the first degree of tropical Aquarius, that Pluto is past that gateway, that Pluto and Aquarius will be part of the shape for our souls and those who come through in the next decade too. That Uranus now interacting with Pluto in this harmonic way really does, I think, offer some beautiful opportunities. And, perhaps the great potential of the internet. I don't know if this hood's even going to work for us, but we'll try. Um, to break through the lies. Will arrive. But now there is so much personal will. And, I'd say discernment because it's now culturally acceptable, but the true word is discrimination, which is a power of the mind that will be necessary for us to assist this Uranus trine Pluto opportunity to come through in a way opportune. As above, so below. As below, so above. We are not just audience members of the Celestial Symphony. We have instruments in our hands, and we are invited, implored to jam. So if you need to call celestial something like celestial, it's okay. Spirit loves some improvisation. Spirit actually loves the force of self, or you would not be here. That's the math, right? If the individuated self was some terrible thing, you would not exist. So be careful of the potential downfall of Pluto and Aquarius. The beauty of power of the people can be used also as a power against the people through this idea that person is an illness. And here comes Aries, right? So, what an amazing thing for this Uranus Pluto trine time to coincide with Neptune in the middle of the riddle. What? Now, it's the strangest thing already that, like, all of us have Neptune sextile Pluto in our natal charts. What? Have you considered that, like, mathematical impossibility? It's not impossible because these ain't circles, Jack, especially when you're talking with Professor Pluto, right? So consider the truth that Uranus, which takes 84 years to get about the zodiac, has a 2 to 3 relationship with Neptune, who gets around and wait, no, how's this one work? Sorry, 1 to 2 relationship with Neptune, right? You multiply that 84 times 2, you get 168, and Neptune gets around in like 165 years, yeah? Well, that one, Neptune and Pluto, are in a harmonic. The third harmonic, or the musical fifth relationship, which is 3 to 2, right? So Pluto gets around the zodiac twice for every 3 Neptunes. In other words, it takes a lot longer for Pluto to get around the zodiac than it does for Neptune. Neptune's like 165 years, Pluto's like 248. So how could they keep the same shape with one another for so long? Like, I don't care your age. If you're alive, vampires aside, or other immortal things, you know what I'm saying. You're going to have a Neptune Pluto sextile in your natal chart. You likely have a Chiron Uranus opposition, which is the same type of weird. So, how can this happen? In the late 70s, early 80s, Pluto simply, well, not simply, but for much of the reasons, because it's when Pluto was so far from the Earth Sun plane. But Pluto got closer to Sun and closer to Earth than Neptune, which is wild because, of course, Pluto can achieve a much greater distance away than Neptune ever can. But Pluto's orbit is so elliptical, it gets far away and then it comes close. And some of you were born in this like early 80s times when Pluto was actually closer to Earth than Neptune. Wild, right? And actually, their distance was pretty similar, and that means that they were moving at, generally speaking, the same speed. And so they just kept the sextile like forever, and it's still on. So that in and of itself is strange. It's wild. And the wild thing is now they're just like the opening arm, if you will, of the sextile fan, right? Like Aquarius to Aries, so Pluto to Neptune, and Aries to Gemini, Neptune to Uranus. So Neptune at the midpoint of this Uranus-Pluto trine, this sexy trine. And it's rare. I was told recently by Steve Pincus, who's the kind of guy that knows about these types of things, that Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto only form some kind of midpoint picture, meaning Uranus in between Neptune and Pluto, or Neptune in between Uranus and Pluto, or Pluto between Neptune and Uranus every 500 years. Pretty rare, right? So they're doing that now, and they're doing that in a shape that obeys the rules of traditional astrology. Not only is Neptune between Uranus and Pluto, but with Uranus and Pluto trine, that means Uranus is sextile Neptune, and Neptune is sextile Pluto. So all of these so-called Ptolemaic aspects. Let's see if we can walk backwards to try to keep the wind out of our microphones. Julian asks, 1 to 2 is also sort of an octave. It's absolutely the octave. And 2 to 3 is the musical fifth. All of those are embedded in the astronomy of Mercury, who is so absolutely genius. And like, there's ways that we could create like harmonic charts right now. Like this sixth harmonic chart would show Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto all conjunct. Well, what is the sixth harmonic about? It is probably about community. And a way to participate with that philosophy is just to consider what is the relationship between the first and the third houses, or the first and the 11th houses. Or let's go like this, 11, 1, 3. What if we combine all those things together? I think we're just going to have to hide over here. And, well, I also need to be a good dad, which means I need to walk that way. So we're just going to be windy, friends, which is cool because that's what we're talking about. And why are we talking about it? First of all, it's a sign of the times for some time. Okay, well, let's get to Saturn. I didn't speak much about Aries Neptune. I will say Aries Neptune is this kind of interesting contradiction, if you will, just like Pisces Saturn is and was and will be. Because it's like with Pisces Saturn, and Saturn will be returning to Pisces soon. There's something about the boundaries of the boundarylessness, right? Like there's something about the rules and the structures of the dream world, right? The form of water, which intriguingly is like whatever shape the earth that holds the water is. Yes. So I'm like studying the tides here and trying to wonder why. Oh, high tide was at 8 something a.m. and low tide will be at 3 something. No, the opposite. Low tide at 8 and high tide at 3 something today. And well, I can say this to the sun and the moon. You know, like the shape of the earth, like the shape of the container, like it matters so much, maybe even more than some of these other things. Earth. It's all about the earth, y'all. The most important planet. So Neptune and Aries, like how is that I don't want to say a contradiction, but an oddity? Like what is the spirit, Neptune, of self? What is the selflessness, Neptune, of self? You know, like, and I think on one level, it's like really do realize that your incarnated self has divine purpose and that you are not separated from the one thing that ever was, is, and will be. That our ability to conceive of that, but I won't say inability, but great difficulty in perceiving that is part of the trick, right? Like you are the light. But you're not supposed to know that, or else you can't do you. And doing you is the most important thing you could ever do. Welcome to Earth. Now, Saturn in Aries, where Saturn in the tradition is said to be in fall, and that's kind of intriguing. Right? Think about this. Like Saturn is said to be in exile in Leo, Cancer, and is said to be in fall in Aries. Well, think about this. Why would the sun love Leo? Why is Leo a home for the sun? Now, that's typically taught through a Northern Hemisphere seasonal thing. Hottest time of the year. Time to hit the beach, boardwalk, and find your inner child on a roller coaster. Okay. Because the kid demands, and he's not wrong. And we can find a way to deal with the debt. Anyway, sorry to make this too personal and real. Hi. Sun said to be an honored guest in the sign of Aries. Why is that? Well, some might throw some Northern Hemisphere seasonal trip on this too. It's the beginning of spring. And you know, maybe that's where that code is at home. But maybe it's something else. And just archetypally speaking, I mean, consider the truth that when the sun rises to illuminate the earth, he hides the heavens, right? By day, there can only be one star in your sky. Do you feel the Aries there? Do you feel that Leo crown? Dare I say Corona? Hello, Earth. Aw, that was a convenient time to do this little sun gazing and catch 3 trees. So Saturn is things that are opposite the sun. You know, the visible planet that is the furthest away and therefore moves most slowly through the constellations and through the signs, at least as far as the slowest one detectable to the human eye. So Saturn is cold. slow, far. So it's intriguing that like Saturn finds himself in the middle of this riddle between these invisible beings. Now, my theory, and I use this in my practice, and I think typically it's very effective, is that the invisible planets come to us and through us via their connection with the visible planets. And so, one thing that inspires this topic for our storytelling today is that the Leo new moon, 6 days ago. How do I know 6 days ago? Because right now I know, having seen that moon last night, it was the first time I saw the moon in a while. It's been so foggy in Berkeley where we've recently moved. I saw the moon was not so far away from Spica. It was like a day away from Spica. Well, that means a lot to me because I love that star and I love the moon, but also my daughter was born with moon Spica, so I know she's about to have a lunar return. Now, my daughter was born with a Gemini sun, not a Leo sun. She was born during a waxing trine, not a waxing quintile. So it's really cool during your lunar returns to kind of track how the phase of the moon changes from one to the next. And again, there really is something so Leo about the quintile. There's something so playful and creative about that shape. Actually, it was made for you to play music like this. Which, by the way, for those of you who music, speaks to the major third. It's a fifth of the string, or more audibly within the range of an octave, 4/5. And we can think of 72 degrees in one direction or 72 in the other. That's either going to be in sextile space or square space, sign-wise. And that's an intriguing thing to consider too. But I'll leave that up to you. So anyway, with this Leo new moon, I mean, who's more visible than the moon? The sun, right? Like, who has the greatest tidal force? The moon. And when they combine, we move into our king tides. Oh, sorry, whoever asked me about vodka, the spring tides. No kings, y'all. But in Leo time, right? So this great pull with a Leo new moon, which aligned in this sexy trine shape to make a sexy trapezoid. Ah, was it? Yeah. Aquarius, Aries, Gemini, Leo, right? Most of the signs that would create a grand sextile forming a trapezoid. Now, interesting, like if we kind of study like, or give powers to planets based upon rarity, like whether it's trivial or not, I don't know how to say it. Then, we're going to give the most power to Pluto. He's just, Pluto. It's going to take Pluto a lot longer for Pluto to get back to Aquarius than it will for Neptune to get back to Aries, and it will for Uranus to get back to Gemini, and that will for Saturn to get back to Aries. And certainly we have a Leo new moon every year. Now, next year's Leo new moon won't be aligned to this shape, but Jupiter will be. And I'll tell you right now that I am sure that you will notice things in your life that in some ways might feel Saturn constricted, opportunity for grounded, call for wisdom, that will expand in July of next year. When Jupiter, who then comes into geometric shape, trapezoid, with this Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, sexy trine, after Saturn has left the building, there's going to be something about this time now that in a very different way blossoms next year. Like right now, there's something about setting the framework that will, in a sense, lift off. And so much of this will have to do with Aries and with Leo. So again, make it about you. You do you. I've been talking about myself a ton lately in interviews and stuff, which is all right. Like that's what an interview often is, not always. But like I did a class, many of you were there last week, where I talked about myself for a long time. And maybe that's just narcissistic and a terrible use of students' time and dollars. Folks in constellations, maybe I shouldn't even call them students. Some of y'all are. But my hope is that, like, if I let my star shine, and even if I share about some of my own difficulties and challenges, then you will be more inspired to feel okay shining your light, taking the stage, and that you'll develop more trust in the constellation and that the other stars won't judge you. And I really felt in that particular journey last Saturn's Day, um, that a lot of folks opened up in really cool ways. But I don't know. I mean, yet 2 days ago, I received a couple testimonials that were like really brilliant, beautiful, shining reviews of my work. One of you is here right now, and I haven't replied. Thank you so much. It means so much to me when that happens. It really fills my heart. And on the same day, I received just a complete shattering of my work. A reading that I had with a person that did not at all enjoy my banter, felt like I was not listening to them, and some other things. I asked them to give me another try. We'll see what happens. And, frankly, it's like good for me. Getting knocked down a little bit so that I can build it back stronger. And Saturn's going to participate in that way. There's one more thing that I want to share. Is like, why would I call this the sexy trine of the invisible overmind? Well, it's really also the overheart and the many other things. Uranus, many say, well, modern astrology has taught, is like a higher octave of Mercury, that Neptune is a higher octave of Venus, that Pluto is a higher octave of Mars. Intriguing things to consider. But there's something about these invisible beings, when treated invisibly, have so many great mysteries to reveal, but they're kind of above, like below, outside of our senses, right? They like ask us to open our extrasensory perceptions, our super powers, if you will. Which is, I don't mean like better than, I mean outside of the normal. And y'all are outside the normal because you're walking the Santa Cruz Beach boardwalk with this weirdo and all these people up here, right? So, like, how can Saturn, which might look, by the way, like the rule, Saturn and Aries, it might look like ways that, first of all, invite you to really ground into who you are, to know that every decision you make changes your world, so that changes the world. Every moment is judgment day, It's a heavy way to put it. But it might also look like outer forces trying to limit your selfness, your individuality. And I don't know whether or not we should resist. If I ask Uranus, yes. If I ask Pluto, yeah. Be careful of powerful forces that are trying to extinguish your individual life by saying that's the only way that equality can be achieved. Be very careful of this. That's my suggestion. So you do you. Now, Saturn and Neptune, there's an ability for the great dream to come into form, and I would suggest at an accelerated rate. Because Saturn's slow, but Neptune's a lot slower. And in the midst of this beautiful shape, and that this Leo moon is just kind of instigating at least this month, at least this cycle, for you to come out and play, and for us to show you who you are. If you've been thinking about launching your own podcast, do it now, immediately. If you've been thinking about asking some beautiful woman to date you, ask her, do it, kiss her with consent. It's okay. If you've been thinking about spending your time with a most magical little baby girl, you gotta do it. Trust me, it's the best thing ever. Though sometimes also quite challenging and very grounding. What is your experience of these energies right now? How are they coming to you and coming through you? And how can you personally help these invisible forces come into form to create a better world for you, for yours, for all of us? You have the power. You definitely have the power. Look at this. Hi. 100. All right. Thanks so much for spending some time with me, friends. I would suggest as well, if you have a little bit of a longer term project, a year and a month, because Jupiter coming into Leo next year will come into the shape after Saturn's left. This would be a really wonderful time to set the kind of personal foundation for the thing that can, like, let's say that to create the spark that next year will be a roaring flame, a bonfire that we can each dance around all night long. Consider that. Thanks for being here. Please look into constellations. Go to GeminiBrett.com, click on the Constellations Community tab, or type in GeminiBrett.com/constellations, and you'll find your way to a place where you can learn more about the School of Astrology's community space that this beautiful woman, baby mama here, Scorpiana, and I hold together. In fact, we're teaching a class this Saturday, or sharing some energies this Saturday around the archetype of the planet Earth. Yeah, astrologers speaking about Earth. And we're going to spend a whole month with Earth. So I hope you'll come tour the Earth with us. Sign up for a month. Give it a try. Oh, by the way, you can type in the coupon code STAR Tribe, all one word. All right. If you're already in constellations, and many of you here are, please invite your friends. This would be a great month to do so. All the love to you. May your light shine through. For we are the world, especially you. See you in space, friends.